Well, friendos, I wanted to do a thing about the VR. Now, you know, the women in the VR is supposed to be the new field where they can just kind of jump into and do whatever they feel like. You know, kind of get in there and get out of the old boys club. No, it's going to be a woman's club now. Except it's not. And one of the largest companies that were hiring women to report on VR and do VR stuff, as it turns out, was actually, like, hyper misogynistic to the degree that it was, well, we'll just explain what happens here. Now, see, there's a big lawsuit, and this is a rather old story, but we can go into this one pretty quickly here. Apparently, these guys over at Upload VR had themselves a little fun in the office. It was a little bit interesting. You know, they had their little mommies, their little cleanup mommies and everything else like that, and they found that it was so hard to concentrate while around the women in the office that they had to refuse to let them into meetings and other things. So I agree with that sentiment, and I think that what they did was a good thing. I can't imagine a world in which I don't have a hard time working around women because, you know, they're like my mommy. Well, so we just go over a little bit of a reading here. Some of the biggest companies in the tech world have been marked by sexual harassment and gender discrimination allegations over the past few years, from engineer Susan Fowler exposing an allegedly systemic problem at Uber, to Ellen Pao suing the venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins for discrimination, to the female engineers at Facebook claiming gender bias. The latest allegations concern virtual reality startup Upload VR, which is being sued by Elizabeth Scott, its former director of digital and social media, for sexual harassment, discrimination, and wrongful termination. But even in a culture that's almost become inured to the shock of yet another sexual harassment lawsuit, oh no, the allegation of this one seemed particularly egregious, and the allegations are kind of out of control, given that the complaints paint a picture of a wild frat house culture where women were allegedly referred to as mommies who had to clean up condoms and underwear left behind in the company's kink room, where male employees would regularly have sex, according to the complaint. Women at the company were allegedly subjected to a daily barrage of insults, sexual comments, and general degradation that made working there a total hell. No, they don't have that in quotation marks, but I'm putting it in quotation marks because it's hilarious. Male employees discuss sex at the office on a daily basis. Now, I'm going to remind you, this is way back in May when all this stuff was coming out, according to BuzzFeed. And BuzzFeed kind of had some issues when they were reporting on this stuff because they seem to have copy-pasted a lot of this information back and forth into different articles that they have regarding it. But that's a whole nother subject, isn't it? Well, apparently they would discuss their sexual exploits in graphic detail at the workplace in front of the plaintiff and other female employees. The sex life of one employee, Greg Gottman in particular, was a frequent topic of discussion. The other male employees would talk about how he refuses to wear a condom and has had sex with over 1,000 people. That's genius. How do you do that? How do you have sex with over 1,000 people, and why is it a topic of discussion at the office? Oh, I don't know, because it's fucking awesome. Good for him. You know what I mean? I mean, if he ain't got any STDs from that, he's beat the odds, I'll tell you that one. Male employees stated how they were sexually aroused by female employees, and how it was hard to concentrate and be productive when all they could think about was having sex with them. God, I can relate. One male employee, Abby Horowitz, would frequently comment about how attractive one of the female employees was in plaintiff's presence. He would talk about how he had a boner and had to go to the bathroom to rub one out so he could focus, meaning that he was going to the bathroom to masturbate. This is like talking about the most cringy episode of, like, I'm a kid, like 12 years old, and I can't help but talking about beating my drum down at the old MMORPG lounge because you found out one of your people's a women's. Now, company founder Taylor Freeman made it known that he did not find plaintiff attractive and that she could not be used for marketing purpose because she was too big. I read about this in another part of a different article on it. Apparently, the booth babe thing is a big problem, even though what they're failing to realize is that women bring in people. And that marketing, you don't want fat, nerdy, hairy guys sitting around inside the E3 booth waiting for people to come in, because that's generally speaking not going to bring people in to see your expos, no matter how you look at it. Oh, man. Oh, she was too big. I'd like to see a picture of her. Let's see if we can't find, I I'll have to look up the plaintiff later on. Before a trip to Asia, company executives sent around an email about how they were trying to get samurai girls, aka submissive Asian women, for the trip. Now that, my friend, is fucking awesome. These guys really know how to plan a fucking party. Jesus Christ. Male employees engage in sexually explicit conduct in the office in the presence of the plaintiff and other female employees. Gottman brought a female companion to the office, and she proceeded to straddle him and kiss him while they were in the shared office space. I need to work there. I need to work there. It goes on, though. There was a room, and we talked about this earlier, referred to as the kink room, that contained a bed. They put a bed in the room in their office space, and male employees would go in there and have sex, right? Underwear and condoms and wrappers would be found in there. Jesus Christ! What were they thinking? At a party rented at a house in Los Angeles, that Scott was required to attend. Scott, by the way, I believe is the plaintiff. A male employee invited prostitutes and strippers. In another conference, Freeman forced Scott out of a room so he could have sex with the woman he brought to the event. That's just genius, dude. Oh, man. You're not going to piss off anybody by doing that. Jesus Christ. Now, mind you, these people were setting up their company as a big deal about how we respect the women's... Oh, man. That's just fucking awesome. Men at the company separated themselves and the woman sat together in a separate room and refused to allow Scott to sit with them. They also refused to let her come to lunch with them and didn't include her on important emails or meetings. Ooh, that burns! That burns being out of the circulation. But you're a women's, and that's what matters. Women at the organization had to perform womanly tasks, including cleaning the kitchen, organizing the refrigerator, and tidying up the workspace. They also had to clean up after parties, including on their days off. Oh, and they were referred to as mommies. Item number 12, they were referred to as mommies who were there to help the men with whatever they needed. Scott alleges she was fired in retaliation for complaining about the work environment. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. That's genius. What the fuck were they thinking? What the fuck were they thinking? I know what they're thinking. They're thinking to themselves, let's make use of this whole female, feminazi, fucking Oculus VR, ridiculous horseshit where women are supposed to be able to finally make their way into the video gaming field. Except, as discussed in another thing, which is a panel or something like that, where some guy injected himself into the conversation, and I'll show you that article in a second. Apparently, women just don't have the skills. And honestly, I'm prone to believe that. You see, I've read something in the other article, too, about how apparently about 80% of the employees were women. Now, let's try to find that piece here, because that was an interesting statement. I fail to understand why you would feel the need to hire 80% women unless you were seeking to exploit them, but we'll go on. Ah, there it is. Upload's role in the community made it particularly hard to speak out, especially since, at least externally, the company's management seemed outspoken on gender equality. Co-founder Will Mason, who is 27, was briefly on the advisory board of SHFT, Shaping Holistic Inclusion in Future Technologies, an organization founded by Jen Duong and Julie Wong, two LA-based young women in VR. He also contributed to discussions in the Women in VR Facebook group, which Dong and Young co-founded in the fall of 2015, which boasts that its membership of 5,600 comprises 80% women and 20% men. Ah, that's what it was. It was a Facebook group that, as I remember, the men were later kicked out of for defending themselves because it created an unsafe space. That is so true. I wouldn't want people defending themselves. After all, if it's a problem that actually goes to court, it can only be used as evidence, whatever they say, right? You don't want that. You don't want fucking corroborating evidence. So, I guess they had to go. They were trying to create a virtuous cycle for VR. Unfortunately, they're fucking scumbags, I guess. Several women interviewed by BuzzFeed News expressed discomfort with how the group had handled the allegations. Some argued that the group's admins were too slow to act. Others said they questioned some messages Duong, in particular, posted to the group defending Upload. A comment in which Duong said she viewed Upload as family, to be very honest, and wanted nothing more than for them to succeed. was particularly troubling for members who worried Upload was using them to polish its image. As one group member wrote, Upload had positioned itself as a young, hip, progressive company that was about building community in the kink room, clearly, and that they had used people, Jen Duong and others, to bolster the perception that they were a feminist-supporting, diversity-supporting organization that was positive for women. Go fucking figure. Go figure. You know what?
This kid's got the tism. This kid's got the tism.
That's reality, man. That's reality. That's what these people do with these fucking organizations. You can't sit there and pretend like all this stuff is anything but a ploy to gain more support from a community so that you can go and exploit them. That's all this ever was. That's all feminism is in the modern... And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You should not be building companies based on the idea of hiring women or any other minority group. And women aren't minorities. Let's get that fucking straight right now. Men are minorities compared to women in the actual statistics. But let's talk about this for a second. Let's delve into the idea that you can pretend like it's a good idea to hire people based on their sex. It's not. The people who create the best stuff should be the ones involved in the field. Now, I'm sorry, I really don't want my VR injected into by a bunch of women. Frankly, though I agree that they can produce great content, I do not agree that a majority of them possess the faculties required to create great content for me. It will be content focused on women. Now, there is a social aspect of VR which is extremely important when regarding this, because VR does have the ability to represent social feelings with women. They can certainly use it for their various products, but women in general aren't very interested in this sort of startup tech to begin with. They never have been. Historically, women are the least interested in all this new tech unless it has some sort of social function. Women weren't interested in computers until the advent of social fucking technology, and there's no way around that. If you don't get that, you are mistaken. All right, you are mistaken. It's obvious. Now, I grew up in the 1990s through early 2000s. Women didn't give a shit about computers back then. They only started to give a shit about computers when MySpace and then Facebook came along. Now, yes, some women played video games and all. That's great. That's neat. That's cool. And some of them went on to produce great content. But just like directing, just like anything where you're in charge of a situation like that, women tend not to do very well in those situations because they lack a lot of backbone. And the ones that don't lack backbone, unfortunately, come off like bitches. God, I hate saying that, because it's not necessarily true. There are some extremely powerful, extremely successful women in business today. The problem is that you have these organizations that use the idea that women should be wholesale involved in every aspect of every business community, and it's just not possible. It's not possible for full representation to occur on a completely equal level. It's never going to happen. Women and men are two different creatures. And the fact is that I think that men just care more about programming in general. Or at least they have in the past. Certainly in the colleges where they've tried to inject women into these situations, it becomes like this. But let's go on. According to screenshots, blah, 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 on paper, except for women. We've already been over that. Let's see if we can't find the juicy bit that I was talking about earlier. Oh, this was fun. She complained about having pictures taken about her. This was interesting. This is really interesting. Upload is, to be sure, an extreme example, but even women who said that they view the VR industry as generally a welcome space said that they'd had negative experiences. You're going to have negative experiences anywhere you go. I'm sorry. Sorry. What am I going to do about it, you know? Or are we going to just go ahead and cut out the humanity aspect? Especially in men. Men can't be allowed to express their humanity or have faults, right? Ainsley Sutherland, a VR game designer who is a former BuzzFeed Open Lab fellow, well, that fucking explains everything, recalled being unwittingly photographed during an Oculus demo. There's something really odd about it, she said. This idea that there's something really odd about it, she said. This idea that this woman can't see that we're all looking at her. It's a little creepy, especially because it's way more dudes than girls. What? Just relax, please. Please? I've never been in a place where someone in a room of 150 people injected himself into the conversation. I'm sorry. Maybe that requires a little more context because that just sounds insane. Adora Udoji. who started a VR and AR company called ZFS4 Productions after a long career in radio and broadcast news, good for her, remembered moderating an all-female panel about VR where two men interrupted the panelists before the Q&A started. I've never been in a place where someone in a room of 150 people injected himself into the conversation, she told BuzzFeed News about the men's comments. And what he was saying was very hostile, that women don't have the skills. And you're talking to a panel of women who are technologists. It was so out of the bounds of accepted public behavior in a professional setting. Maybe so. Maybe he shouldn't be saying that in a public setting. But the fact is that the facts is. And the facts say that women, generally speaking, are just not technologically inclined to that degree because there is no socialization that requires them to be. There just isn't. There just isn't, and there really never has been. Now, you start showing me gobs of female IT people, and I will start agreeing with you. But until that day comes, anyway. Going on. Southern moderated a woman in VR panel about pornography at a conference that got derailed by male audience members. I guess she was worried about getting railed, and she didn't really think that she'd ever have to get derailed. We were having a discussion around porn and VR in the industry, and how the industry needs to be thinking and talking about porn and how it's shaping the industry, she said. We were being cognizant and thoughtful about it. This male individual berated us, saying, as females, you have responsibility to protect our children. It was very intense. It's phrasing. It was an interesting display of this idea that somehow women, in VR, we can't talk about the same material or subject matter, that we have responsibility that males don't have. The dad said that one of the two women at the recent conference in the Bay Area, almost every man I spoke to assumed that I wasn't in the VR industry, and that I was accompanying someone at the conference. They kept asking, who are you here with? It's definitely stuff that sticks with you. Well, of course it does. And you know what? You're going to continue to see that sort of thing because women are not generally perceived as the sort of people who are going to go out and try to advance technological forms like that. And it's not men's fault that they perceive them like that. It's the socialization that you see around that, and there's no way to get past it. There's no way to get past it. As long as women are a minority in these fields, and they will continue to be because they are not interested in these fields, this fucking data is in. The data is in, anecdotal and otherwise. Women are not interested in this stuff, okay? And when you force it down their throats, what it really does is it hurts the male enterprise within those situations. Oh well. So, given that there's a lawsuit going on, I guess I'll really briefly take a look at some of the actual allegations, or maybe I'll post it in the ending settings. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and I'll post it in the comments at the end. But what do you think here, people? Do you think VR needs more women's in it, or do you think that it should just be allowed to exist as it will? And when idiots like these people that upload VR do things like call the women in their workspace mommies, which is completely inappropriate, because what you are doing is creating a hostile work environment for women who otherwise might be able to do a good job, and there's plenty of them that can. Don't you think that do you think these people ought to be? Do you think these people are doing something wrong? Do you think that there's something going wrong in these situations, or do you think that it's just eventually going to settle itself out? Do you think that it's going to eventually rock itself out, and it's going to be just like every other industry? Men are overrepresented, women are underrepresented, and everybody complains about it all the time, and we get the diversity in gaming, because that's the big push in VR, is the diversity in gaming, and I can't tell you how many dumb, stupid-ass VR games I've seen money poured into for no fucking reason other than the socialization and the female aspect. I mean, we could go in and talk about Oculus. Want to talk about Oculus real quick? Anyway, what I hate seeing is that VR seemingly has become a avenue for propaganda, because they find that they can interject themselves, these social justice people, these feminists and everything, interject themselves into a new and growing field, which is exactly how they operate. It's very interesting to see the neo-Marxist operating in this new format. What they are doing is holding it back. I mean, we see refugee documentaries created by the BBC. We see things like Through the Ages. President Obama celebrates America's national parks, which is a bolstering method for his terrible national park legislation, which I believe was rescinded by President Trump. Oh well. What are you going to do? Well, let us leave a comment and, maybe subscribe and like and do that, or maybe maybe just shoot me. Because I'm tired of this shit. I really am. Thanks for watching, guys.